So I'm here with Antonia.
Yes.
And what's your horse's name?
Goose.
Goose. Here with Goose. And you had me come over here to give you a little bit of help because you're having some issues. Could you just share with us kind of what's been going on?
Yeah, so Goose is a 5-year-old thoroughbred. I've had him for about a year, and he had most of that year off for a variety of medical issues. And as he's been getting restarted, he needs a little help finding a go button.
So he's off the track thoroughbred.
Off the track thoroughbred.
Raced a couple times.
Raced 2 times, and then was kind of briefly restarted. And then he's spent about the last year not doing a lot. So his issue is really when he's asked to go forward, he's pretty bulky. And if you kind of continue to ask him, he'll kick out or buck in response to kind of the request to go forward. So he's typically, once he starts going, pretty happy to work, but it's really that like initiation of a job that he finds really difficult. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And so you normally do a little bit of groundwork before you ride him?
Yes, he's been starting to learn some groundwork. He definitely knew nothing about a year ago, and so he's been learning just some kind of basic yields and pressure and stuff, and I'd say he's so-so.
Is that going pretty well, or is there some issues on the ground that you'd like help with?
He's pretty good with steady pressure. I think it'd be helpful to work on some of the like yields, especially shoulder. He has a hard time with, particularly his right shoulder, which is a pattern when I ride him too. He likes to kind of collapse into that shoulder.
Okay.
And then our program right now is we typically lunge him to get him started because he knows how to do that. And then we train him to kind of voice commands as well to try to help him like put the pieces together. And then usually I'll get lunged on him to try to help him transition into having a rider, and then we take that off and see if he'll kind of go forward and do the ride.
All right, sounds good. Well, why don't you just kind of show me what your normal routine is, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, ABI Attachments. So ABI Attachments hooked me up with the TR3 E-Series Arena Drag, and this thing is incredible. I mean, it is like having a personal assistant for your arena, because it does everything. It's got a scraping blade here that kind of aerates the soil and can cut out grass if you got some grass growing in. It's got a floating leveling blade that is incredible for keeping consistency throughout the whole arena. And then all the different settings of the drags that breaks up and loosens the material. And then of course their patented comb that they have here at the back just lays a really nice finishing layer down at the end. This drag is blowing me away with how easy it is to pull. It's super easy to use because you can just drop it all the way down and it rests, the frame of it rests on these wheels. And so it takes out a lot of the operator error that can happen with making some whoop-de-doos in the arena as you go. So if you guys are in the market for an arena drag, you are definitely going to want to check out the ABI Attachments. They have applications for everybody's different uses, and make sure you check them out. I'll leave a link in the description below. Let's get back to the video. Do you mind if I have you experiment with a couple things? Because I want to understand a little bit more it's important to really understand what cue it is, or if it's just flat out going forward at all. But like for now, don't use the whip. Just get it. No voice cues either. Just legs. Let's see what he does. Let's go to a halt and ask him to trot. With your legs. Let's do it one more time. Just don't kick the mirror. Okay. Just bend him around there. Okay. Now, don't use legs at all. And just use a voice cue and see if you can get any movement from just a voice cue. Okay, now if he slows down, then add a little tap. And where do you normally tap him? Yeah, no legs. A little tap. Okay. So it's everything, everything that needs to go forward. Okay, let's step off him, and let's see where we can move the needle. If you're not on Patreon and you would like to have me as your coach in horsemanship, I have lots of videos on there. We go through a fundamental series where you can teach your horse a really good foundation and check them out. So if you guys would like to have me help you on there, go check it out. We'll leave a link in the description below. So what I'm thinking right now is I think there's three issues going on. I think the first issue is you're not doing enough yielding of his feet in various ways for him to see you as the leader. So I think he's pretty left-brained, and I think that's why you were saying the shoulder gets sticky, and that's why he doesn't want to go, even though he's really quiet. Yeah. It's also why he's pretty successful out on the trail, because he's happy to go forward. Like you said, he's pretty brave and going forward there. I think there is some tension that when a rider's first on him, of getting him to bend through his ribs, that we could get him to relax a little bit more. Yeah. Because when they're left-brained, they can get a little tense, but it can still be a no versus an I can't. Yeah. And so I'm seeing him say no's. But if we do help him get a little more comfortable, a little more relaxed through his ribs, the sheath noise that we heard, that's tension. That's not him just saying, that's not him being totally chill and like, no, there is a little tension there. Yeah. But because he's so strongly left-brained, it's a no, not a I can't, which is a very different thing. Yeah. Okay, when a horse says no versus I can't. And some people argue with me about this in the YouTube comments, so you guys can go ahead and bring it on. But it's very much true. Horses can be afraid of something and say I can't. Yeah. And I don't even know that I would say normally that's it. It's near 50-50 of no's and I can'ts. Yeah. And like another couple words that I'll use to identify different what I'm feeling in the horse. If I say they're leaning on something, or if I say they're bracing, brace is fear-based. They're unsure, they got tight, and they hunker down and they hold their breath, and they're like they're taking it and they're braced and they're not moving, but they're tensed up about it. You do not want to add pressure. Yeah. They're already putting enough pressure on themselves. Yeah. We need to hold and maintain in that position. Leaning on something is a different story. Leaning is they're wearing the pressure. And if we continue to apply that same amount of pressure in that same way, and they're leaning, which is what he's doing on the cues, we're going to teach them to what I like to call wear the pressure. So it's like him wearing the saddle, like it's just there and it's going along with him, but we're not building any responsiveness to it. Then the third thing is we need him to more clearly understand legs mean go when they come on. If it was just the leg cue, I would actually be tempted to do a dressage training strategy where you actually teach the horse, you take your legs off and then it means go. And you can actually do like a workaround. You can formulate a different cue, but he leans on legs, he leans on the stick, the whip when you tap him with that, he leans on the voice cues. So he's saying no to forward just overall as a whole. so pretty clear there. So those are kind of the three things that we got to cover. We got to help him get relaxed to his ribs. We want to do some yields where he sees the human as the leader better. And we got to help him understand the answer is yes to a cue. And I think if you feel comfortable, I'm going to do some groundwork with him and show you and experiment a little bit. But I would actually like it if you wouldn't mind riding him again, and I'll talk you through what to do. Yeah. You seem very comfortable on him, and you seem very coordinated with everything, so I don't feel like it needs to be me, and it'll be a good kind of learning opportunity for you. Yeah. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Do you want me to ride him after you do the groundwork?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. So I talk about this quite a lot in my videos. But getting a horse to see us as the leader is one of the best things we can do. For instance, if we just spend time with our horse, feed them, scratch them, they can kind of become our friend without ever seeing us as the leader. In horse language, you become the leader by moving their feet. So if they're, and this is very clear if you watch a herd dynamics, you're shaking your head, so I'm assuming you're nodding your head, I should say. So you're agreeing with me, you understand that horses have a pecking order and they vote for their leader every day. which means they're always, even if you have a perfect session today, they're going to test it in some way tomorrow. It's just a natural thing for horses to do because they need to know that the leader is going to have the best plan and is the most prepared, most qualified person. So it's not as simple as are we the leader or aren't we the leader. It's more about how much does the horse see us as the leader. So he sees you enough as the leader to move him around, walk, trot, canter on the ground, to do some levels of riding. But that doesn't mean he's ready to go jump, 3 foot, or he's ready to do flying changes, or he's ready to do a canter half pass, you know what I mean? Like in terms of responsiveness to leg cues. So there's a lot of benefits that are going to come from doing the leader. So the way we become the leader to the horse is by getting the horse to willingly yield in various ways. And it's like, an analogy that I use is like, if all you do is go forward, at most, if it's perfect forward, you get 5 points. If it's not that great a forward, you get 3 or 4 points. If it's not very good forward, and see right there, even though he was relaxed, him calling out says he's not, even though we're here with him, he's not thinking about me, he's thinking about other things, which is another indicator that he doesn't see us as the leader. Because if I'm the leader, the herd is already here, he doesn't need to call out for the herd. Does that make sense? So the challenge is we're predators by nature, they're perennials by nature, so convincing a horse that we're a qualified leader is a challenge, right? But we're going to do that for various yields. But back to my analogy here of 5 points. If it's really bad forward, it could be 1 point. It could be negative points if it's bad. So in the saddle, it's negative points. On the ground, I would say you're at like a +3 to 4. It's going there. But just going forward, at most you can get 1 or 2. And I'm talking about out of 100 points total. So if you're only getting 4 out of 100, that's not going to move the needle a lot. If we can yield the hindquarters, we might get up to another 5 points. If we can yield the forequarters, another 5. If we can back him up, we could get maybe another 5, maybe more than 5, because backing up is hard. Okay? If we could get him to side pass, if we could get him to change direction. So do you see my point? The more different things we can ask him to do and have him do it willingly with light, good qualities of response. In horse language, it's like we could pin our ears and get him to do a whole bunch of different things without having to kick or bite. Does that make sense? But if we have to do a lot of things to get it to happen, even though their body's doing the move, it doesn't really count. You don't really getting those points because the horse isn't saying yes to it. Okay? And so because he's not paying attention to me, I'm going to first go ahead and go to the hindquarters. And if they roll forward, then I pick up the halter. But I'm trying to do it first off of connection. And do you hear that breath that he just took? It was kind of like shortened. It was like, like that. He's holding tension in his rib cage, so he needs to also relax. And so that's where there's a few other things that we're going to have to add to it, because it's not as simple as put more pressure on him and get him to say yes and do more. So we also have to help him get more comfortable. So one of the ways of starting that is even just by doing this hindquarter yield. But his first response right here is to leave. Also because he kicks out, if you were doing, making more mistakes with him, doing things all wrong, it could develop where this horse turns and kicks every time he refuses something, because that's what his go-to has been, right, is to kick out. And so that could translate to him turning and kicking towards us too, a little bit like he did when she was lunging him. And so nothing wrong with teaching him the hindquarter yield. Now see, that one was better. I give him the look. I was ready to correct if I needed to, but you can see his first steps now are a hindquarter yield. But that's like, I'm getting like 2 out of 5 points with that, okay? There's a lot more, there's more improvement that could be had there, but 2 is better than 0. Also, part of why I'm touching him the way I am right away and not doing it softer is because he is left-brained, and I don't want him to teach him to wear it. I want him to be a little bit more sensitive. I want it to mean something to him when I do touch him, because he needs to have a little bit more sensitivity to the rider, to what we're doing. Now, part of this too is he's kind of wanting to check out and not think about what I'm asking him to do. And that's one of the things that I find to be a bit typical with thoroughbreds. It's like they're expecting to kind of just be told what to do every step of the way, and I want him to think for himself. And what I mean by that is, before I tapped him every time, I gave him a chance to respond but without me adding more pressure. Just like when you were riding, you giving him a voice cue before tapping him, you're giving him a chance to make a good decision. The only issue was, it wasn't enough pressure for him to go, and then he kicks out and balks at it, and there was no like consequence for that. He needs to find relief moving forward, and then if he refuses to go forward, we need to do something else. So it's like if I ask him to go and he kicks out, the next thing I'm going to have you do is yield his hindquarter, like pick up a rein, and he's going to run into a little more pressure, and he's going to go, oh, I was expecting this to be more relief than it was, versus just pressuring him until he goes forward. So it has to be a conversation, but he needs to run into some pressure for refusing and saying no. So you can see I have a little bit more connection now. At least I thought I did. So now I'm going to ask him to back up just a little bit. Now, do you notice how easy that got right away? There's not a lot for me there. Because he did it well right away, there wasn't a lot of need to do it, so we're going to move on right away. Okay, so it's like I'm looking for the spots that he's sticky on. And he was a little sticky about turning loose to connecting with me. Now there he got tapped because he also looked away and was thinking over there as I was approaching him. So not only did he not step away, he also was like, I'm going to go over here, you know. And then I'll just kind of add in some of these other yields. So now I'm asking him to move his forequarters. It's also a big difference to a horse whether they're stepping off of steady pressure. And you were right about the right shoulder being stickier. There's a difference to a horse versus if I ask him to move to the left off of this. Do you see how that happened willingly? That's me telling him to go over there. Even though I did it very softly, there wasn't hardly any pressure there, I told him to go there. He didn't choose to go over there. Just by switching that yield from the halter to the stick changes that, okay? So by me putting pressure here, and yes, you could say maybe he doesn't know it yet, but there's going to be a difference in his brain if he chooses to take a step. So his left foot took a step, so I'll release. And that's why I'm not giving him a ton of direction with the halter here. He's got to make a decision to step over there. There he did. So one of the things I'm trying to set up on the ground is instead of telling the horse where to go, I show them where not to be. So that when they do go where I wanted, they chose to go there versus I just made them go there. And to be honest, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense from a human standpoint, but to the horse it's a big difference. Because if another horse, if he's at the hay pile and the alpha horse comes up here, they're just telling him to not be here. They're not saying you have to go there, there, there. They're just saying don't be right here. So that actually resonates with horses quite well. And there's a mental choice then in there versus just me telling him what to do, which is why I'm a big fan of getting horses to move off our legs well riding instead of just directing them with the reins. Again, that doesn't mean I don't ever eat there. Very good. So that took a little less. So I was just messing with him because he just kind of, he's like, I'm just going to exit the stage left here. There's a lick and chew, which means he kind of got relief for doing that yield. But I'm trying to get him to also think a little bit about what we're doing here. Very good. And that's when you're really going to have him turn his feet loose, is not by being bigger and badder and putting more pressure on, just more pressure on him and making him do something. It's going to be by getting him to understand there's a conversation that's happening. So here I'm going to practice changing directions. Now, there's two ways you can ask a horse to change directions. One is about building more draw, and one is about building a little more drive. So you could even say confidence versus more assertiveness. So I'm choosing to step into him to ask him to move his forequarters to change directions versus backing up and drawing him into me and then having him come through the middle of the circle. And so that's a very deliberate action when I have a horse that's more left brain, that I'm trying to build more connection to. Now I'm going to mess with him a little bit. So now I'm going to throw my stick and string over his back. But I want him to read my intention, not the energy behind the stick and string. So he's thinking I'm asking him to go, but there's nothing in me. I'm not pinning my ears at him right now. And I expected him to get a little reactionary to this, but this is a little bit of the hole that I was kind of saying in him not connecting with the human very well. He needs to read that, and you want to find like different ways to expose him to different things. So this is kind of addressing some of that confidence stuff that I was talking about. And again, I knew that one would be hard because we were already in motion, but I did it because I wanted to challenge him a little bit with having to think and go, huh, I didn't need to do all that running around fussing. He was actually just doing this. So I deliberately made it a slightly harder puzzle. Because he's thinking we're just going to tell him to go all the time. And what we're going to do is kind of do the opposite of what he's thinking. And this is one example of that. Like instead of me asking him to go faster, I'm actually just asking him to walk while I throw the stick and string over him. There you go. See, that wasn't so bad. And hopefully that helps him find us interesting. Now here's a technique that's going to be we're going to use in the saddle. So right there, I could just keep tapping him until he goes. That's more of a teaching stage. This is going to be more reinforcing. And so I'm going to give him a little feel and say, I would like you to go to the left. And if he's not going, I'm going to swing this at him, and then I'm going to touch him. And then I'm going to reset. And so he's going to learn there's a pattern to this. Instead of just tap, tap, tap. Like even there, he went. I'm not going to accept it because he went off of me tapping him. I want him to go off of that. Does that make sense? So I call that technique for building responsiveness resetting. So you're making it about the first cue. So it's like, I'm going to cluck, ask him to go. He didn't go, so I'll tap him. And there, I'll stop him because I had to tap him, and we'll try that again. And I clucked and it had more meaning to it. But then I'm going to ask him to stop right away because I want him to understand it's not about just movement and him going. It's about the connection to the idea of going. And so you had this idea already by doing more transitions. Now I'm going to ask him for a little side pass. So side passing is a good one. Because it requires his whole body to step away. Very good. But you can kind of see how there's just a lot more depth to the conversations I'm having with him versus just going around in a circle. So you can see that's a hard one. So you saw some things were easy, some things were hard. It's the hard ones where there's more points on the table to get from them. So I'm just asking him to just do everything thoughtfully, because he's kind of just kind of going through the motions. So I'm just drawing a line here saying my bubble's moving backwards. It'd be ideal if you went with it. Otherwise, the boundary with the bubble comes with it. Ah, there we go. So you hear that? So when they blow out, that means they're relaxing through their rib cage. It's equivalent to a human not even recognizing maybe that there was even tension, and all of a sudden they go, they just take a deep breath. They relax through their rib cage. So horses very easily breathe shallow. They hold tension in the ribs. When they do that, they're on the verge of their heart rate escalating. And when their heart rate goes up to a point, then their body's going to start producing adrenaline and cortisol and stress hormones. And so if we can get them to go blow out, that means we're getting them to relax through their rib cage. So then you're less likely to hear that sheath noise. Although that one, it takes very little tension for it to create, so it's like one of the first signs that there's some tension. But I never base what I'm doing off of one thing. I try to read the whole picture. So you go, he's making the sheath noise, but his head is down. Probably not that big a deal. He's making the sheath noise, his head is up, and he's going, have you ever heard it where they breathe and they go like that? It's like, okay, there's a lot of tension going on. Like, he's breathing super shallow and fast. His head is elevated. His muscles are tight. He's making the sheath noise. Yeah, we should probably step down maybe and do some groundwork here. Does that make sense, though? You want to look at the whole picture, not one thing. A lot of people want to make a rule book off of one, the ears did this, the eyes did this, the nose did this, whatever it is. It's like, that's fine. What else was going on? What are the other things? And you can put 2, 3, 4 of those signs together. Now you can make a pretty educated idea where that horse is at. But if you just go off of one thing, you could be going down a rabbit hole chasing something that's not really there, you know. Let me do one more game with him. Actually, I'm not. Normally, right now, I would do like a 3-circle game, but since he just blew out and relaxed, I don't want to like, you know, add more pressure to it. But I'll just show you real quick. Are you familiar with that? Have you watched my videos? Okay. So that's another game that I would also do with him, where you're just asking him to not just go around you, but go around you in basically like a shoulders in position, where his hindquarters are doing a partial disengagement. And that will really help facilitate the ribs bending. So that's part of why he blew out after the side pass, because the side pass, his hindquarters are doing a partial disengagement for more steps, and he had to bend his rib cage when we were side passing. And so that's why that's valuable. Similar to riding of a shoulder in or a leg yield, something like that. All right, I'm gonna have you step on him. Yeah. So we can put his bridle on. Actually, I probably won't use that whip. I might have you tap him with this stick. So let me show you guys, and we'll show the camera here. So these are good for signaling, but they're whippy. Mm-hmm. And so if you used it firmly, there's gonna be a pretty good little sting to it. This is solid, and so it's more of a thunk. It'd be equivalent to like somebody like flicking you. Yeah. You know, like it's like annoying. You don't want to do it again, but it's not like I'm in pain now. Like, ow. You know, or this, if you tapped him firm enough that you might have to with this, that end gets a little snap to it, and it's a little springy. So I actually think using a firmer stick for a couple of days will be helpful. Okay. This is good when the horse is already responsive to it, and you just need to kind of give them a reminder. Kind of similar to riding with spurs. Yeah. Spurs are kind of a reminder tool and an accountability tool, a precision tool, versus like, oh, I'm gonna really bang them with it. You know, it's like, we're not gonna use that. If I feel like I need more pressure than I do squeezing with my spur, I'm gonna ride with a stick and just tap the shoulders, tap the hindquarters. So it wouldn't work. And that's similar to this. You wouldn't really want to have to like do it, because as firm as you may have to tap him, if you did it with this, it would probably get him more defensive.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll switch that too. I'm also going to have you change tactics, and when you tap him, you're going to tap him on the shoulder.
Okay.
You're not going to tap on the hindquarters. Because what's interesting about horses is it doesn't matter as much where the pressure's at, it's more of when it's at and how much was it. If you're taking notes, write that down. If you're not taking notes, write that down. That's a really key thing. Because a lot of people think, like for instance, if a horse isn't going in the trailer, a horse trailer, they think, oh, I need to tap them right when they're by the trailer on the butt. It's like, no, you don't at all. That actually might have an opposite effect, and they might associate that tapping with the trailer because they're standing right there. I could take the horse away from the trailer, and I could move its shoulder around them, and then go back to the trailer, and now they're going to see the trailer as relief because over there was pressure. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so it's like it's more of when and how much versus where. And so because we've already tapped him on his hindquarters, I think tapping him on his shoulder will be a better strategy. Okay. If he kicks out when you tap him, so there's a few things that are critical here. One is that you tap him in the shoulder, not his hindquarters. Another one is the timing. You're going to give him a very subtle cue. I want a voice cue, and I want a slight squeeze with the legs to go. And a soft voice cue too, not like, go like just a, whatever cue you use. If he kicks out or even thinks about kicking out, you're going to pick up the rein up, and you're going to ask him to yield his hindquarters. So you can bump him with your leg and ask him to yield his hindquarters, and then you're going to settle. Okay, that's if he kicks out. If he doesn't kick out, and if you bring your life up, you give him a subtle cue, and he doesn't go, and you tap him, the next thing is reset, not keep tapping, keep going, reset. So if he goes forward after the tap, it's not acceptable. He has to go off of the subtle cue first. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that order is very important. And by resetting, it makes it not about like, I'm going to make you go. It makes it like, you don't have to go, but if you don't go, I'm going to tap you. Mm-hmm. When you do go, I won't tap you. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. So just accept this walk until he thinks about stopping. You probably could like power through it a little bit, and the groundwork would carry this ride a little bit, which hopefully would indicate that that there's some room for improvement there by doing some more yields than just circling. But I do want to challenge him and test him a little bit in the saddle, because it's going to show up again because he's done it so frequently. It's going to happen. And so I want to make sure you have the tools and the sequence to be sure about that. Now what I want you to do is reach down with your outside rein and roll back into the wall. So you're going to turn into the wall. And I'm having you do this because I just wanted to let him stall out, okay? I just wanted to do something different that he was kind of not as much expecting. Now take your time here. Only let me talk you through this. So relax, smile. Because a part of it is if you're anticipating it too, like you have to forget that he's ever done that, okay? You just have to be really present in the moment with him. So is your stick ready to tap him in the shoulder? Okay, so just hands are forward. Just bring your life up. Squeeze very subtly. Give him the voice cue. Tap him on the shoulder and reset. Relax everything. Very important that you relax everything. No, just do that for now. This, for the beginning part here, is a little more about you, just getting the sequence down. So we're going to take our time. We're going to go through it real slowly so you're really sure of each thing. So now again, you're going to bring your life up. Squeeze. One tap. And you got to tap him firmer than that. Yep, and then we're going to stop and reset again. So that was bend him around. Disengage the hindquarters. Strong. Use your leg. Yep, good. One more. Good, and stop. Relax. So he's like, now relax, no reins. So now he's a little bit like, I wasn't expecting to run into pressure for that. So now we have if you do that, here's the pressure. Now I want to go slow with this, not for him, but for you, to make sure you do the sequence. Because that time when I wasn't talking you through it, you did it very quickly. Okay. You went 1, 2, 3. Yeah. I want it to be 1, 2, 3. And 3 is the firm tap. 1 is bringing your life up. And actually it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Because it's like you're going to go through that sequence. So that's a pattern. So part of the reason this will work is we're going to let the pattern do the work versus just adding in more pressure and trying to make it happen one time, okay? The only thing is when you tap him, it's not about tapping him hard enough that he for sure goes. It's about tapping him enough that it made him uncomfortable, that he didn't really want you to tap him again, okay? So I would say you need to, if there was a pressure meter, I would do 1 click up from where you were, okay? You were 1 click too low, okay? So bring your life up, squeeze, relax, because he gave you a try. And for the next like 10 rides, you need to become an expert at this sequence, okay? Because it's going to take a little bit of time because he's going to test it frequently. But you have to keep your composure and do the right thing each time in order for this to eventually disappear. But if you just power through it and you just go, oh, the heck with it, and I'm just going to do this or that and make it happen in that moment instead of letting this be a process and about him understanding, if you don't do that, it'll keep showing up at really inconvenient moments. It'll continue to be very inconsistent. But if you get really good at this sequence, every time you think go and bring your life up, he'll be ready to go, okay? But it takes time to reinstill a new pattern when they've learned a bad pattern to start with, okay? So let's redirect him into the wall. Go the other way. No legs. Release him. Yep. Good. Okay, let's ask him to stop. It probably would have been fairly easy to get him to trot, but I want to first make sure he's understanding this at a standstill here. Okay? So you're relaxed. That's important. Whenever you reset, you relax all the way. So right now we're doing this slowly, but the real time of this, let me see the stick for a second. This is what it would look like in real time. Life up, I'm squeezing, tap, reset, life up, squeeze. See, now he knows the voice cues. He's so smart. Does that make sense? So you reset for a moment, and then you go again. But what's hard for people when I teach them this is after they tap, they're a little bit, and so their next cue is like 1, 2, 3, 4, and they get to it again. Yeah, you got to let them time to process because this is about the conversation of it, not about how many laps you do right now. You're making it completely about the quality of response to you. Eventually, what happens is you bring your life up. He's ready to go into it. It's not even the squeeze or the voice cue, you know.
And he'll like get there towards the end of a ride. Like that's what I mean about like towards the end.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not that hard to go forward on a horse. Like that's one of the easiest things for them to do. But because he's testing it, it's going to be intermittent, and it needs to be about this conversation. That's why I said if you don't stick with this very consistent, 10 rides is almost more for you than for him to like be really good at it, so that your default habit if he shuts down on you isn't to get bigger and power through. This is one of the problems with strong riders or good riders is the horse will be making mistakes and they'll ride through it. If you put your trainer hat on and the client that owns him is a person who has like no leg muscles whatsoever and is very feeble, and they have to be able to go for walk, for trot, and for canter, and he has to go. If you said that was my job, I have to create that, you wouldn't be able to be that strong rider and just power through. You would have to find a pattern and some psychology and get him to be wanting to do it with you. Does that make sense? Yep. And so I can tell you're a strong rider, and that's great because that means you've reached that level of confidence and understanding about your cues and everything. But the problem is you don't want to, it's not about you showing him how much you know about it. It's about bringing him along where he's at and bringing in, improving his level of understanding of what that pressure means. Yep. Okay? Life up. Wow. Squeeze. Not a hard squeeze, just a little squeeze. Reset. And don't release your legs either. Go ahead and stop him. Yep. By stopping him, this is also important because that's how you're communicating to him. This isn't about going. This is about you saying yes, ma'am, when I ask you to go. And hear him blow out and relax, yeah. Because he's anticipating things happening right now, and so we're confusing him a little bit by like, this isn't what, we don't normally sit here this long. It's normally just about going forward. But literally by stopping him and resetting, you're making it not about going forward. So when I'm working with a horse that won't go in a trailer, I have to completely put myself in the mindset, even if we're late, the person's late and they're stressed out and it's like we're all running late, we got to go. you have to, all that has to be to the side. The more I can convince the horse that I'm there all day long, there's no pressure, the quicker they're going to go in the trailer. Yeah. So does that make sense? Yeah. So you really have to be in that frame of mind. Hands forward, life up, squeeze, relax. Good. And the reason I'm having you put all these cues together is because I want him to learn to give you good responses to all the above. You can refine it and say whatever cue you would like to be your first cue to go forward. My cue is squeezing with my legs to go forward at a walk. Now, I don't have a voice cue for that. But you can do whatever you want. But for now, I kind of wanted, because he was bracy at each one of those individually, I wanted to go ahead and use them to change his thought pattern about what those mean. Right now, all those mean go forward, okay? Now let's go through it at asking him to trot. So it's the exact same sequence. If you have to reset, you reset now back to the walk, not a stop. Pick him up, yield the hindquarters, strong, leg, and settle. So relax. If he's walking, that's fine. Now, you bring your legs on quick, like pretty strong. I want you to just send that energy down your legs and start to squeeze, like more slowly. Okay? Life up. Start to bring the energy down to your legs. We're going to reset. Come back to a walk. Softly back to a walk. Yeah. Life up. Woo! There we go. Very nice. That one feel pretty good? Yeah. Redirect him back to the wall. Relax. Life up. Very nice. You're doing great. Go ahead and redirect him back into a wall again. Sit, turn into the wall. Life up. And we've got him. Bend him around and yield the hindquarters there. Because see, that winning out says he's with the herd over there, not with you. So do an interruption of some sort. Like the rollback was great. You could bend him and do the hindquarters. But again, I would put a focus on this. I'm saying like 10 rides, that if you really follow this to a T, it'll be a game changer for all the rest of his development. Because you're going to take some time to put in this qualities of response, him seeing you as the leader, being more connected to you, and then that will lead to a very trainable, easy horse for all the other things you want to do. Let's work on halt to trot. So we're going to sign him up. Okay? So now when you do that, you're expecting him to trot off. Now reset. Good. And when you tap him, I want you to tap him firmer than that. And go. That's okay. You can go. Go. Bend it, pick him up. Yes. Strong. Hindquarters. Now stop and settle. Relax. Okay. Now next time when we reset to a walk, if he kind of wants to go, I want you to go with it a little more. Like you reset, stand still. If you stand still for a moment, yeah, because we want him in that frame of mind. So we don't want to tell him no, don't go too many times. Okay? So take your time, life up. Pick him up, yield the hindquarters, strong. And relax. If you were able to have his head bent and use the stick and tap him on the butt, that'd be pretty cool. Okay? Life up. Squeeze, take your time. Reset. He didn't kick out there. I probably would let that one go. Hands down. Hands down. Relax. Life up. Good. Now, do you see how we have a little tension there? Do you hear that? Okay, go ahead and bend him down there. So I would try to not pull back on both reins. I'm saying bend him down, and I would just have you bend him with one rein. That will still help with the idea of like, we're not gonna pull on you to slow down and that. Yep. Okay, so go ahead and halt. Loose rein, relax. And then go through those cues slowly. Ooh, that wasn't bad. All right, I think we'll take that one. Now, if I'm riding him and I hear that noise, I'm going to be bending him and doing some things that put his body in a bend where his hindquarters are crossing over and he's bending his rib cage. I'm going to help him relax a little bit there because that means there's some tension in there. Let's do that. So come out here to the middle and just see if you can walk him around your inside leg. And you're looking for him to just do a partial disengagement in his hindquarters. So smaller. Slide your leg back a little more. Good. 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 Perfect. So when you hear that noise, I wouldn't keep going. I would recover, bend him down, get him thinking, go back again. And just play with that if you can get him to just move off with even less tension. Yeah. Because those are things that would be easy enough to just skim over, but they're going to show up, like I said, at convenient times. Any holes you leave in your foundation, as you train them through upper levels of whatever sport you're in, you leave holes in there that come up at really inconvenient times. So I think it's important to take your time. So the sequence, you did a great job. Make sure when you tap in the shoulder, it's enough to be effective. Make sure you go through those levels of pressure slowly. Mm-hmm. Take your time through it, because the only kind of mistake that you made is you would go through them kind of quickly. You would go 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. It's 1, 2, 3, because that gives him time to think and make a decision. Yeah. And if he gets there before you get to 4, we're happy. Okay. And if you're doing it from a standstill, which you should practice quite a bit, you bring him to a standstill and then you start going through it. And then let's say he walks and eventually does trot. You could still tap him, but I'm going to let him go forward. I'm not going to hold him back there at that moment. Okay? So it's like, say our goal is halt to trot, and you put your hands down and you bring your life up and he starts going. You still go 1, 2, 3, 4, and now you're trotting, but we don't accept it. Now we're going to come back to a halt. And I would have you do that with one rein, just like talk him into the walk again, or a standstill with one rein versus both reins. Save both reins for when you pick up contact and you want him to give you flexion or stopping or something. It's not worth it pulling on him there with both reins when you want him to go forward anyways. Does that sound good? Yeah. So it's easy enough just to redirect his energy with one rein. Yeah. So that would be the setup for that. We're not going to tell him, no, you can't move at all unless you're trotting, but it's like, I'm still going to follow through and tap you because you should have gone faster back there. It gives those other cues more meaning when you do follow up with the tap. What do you do if he kicks out? Lift him up, yield the hindquarters. And you got to do it fairly strong, because you think how strong he's kicking out. Yeah. Pretty strong, right? He's not like, I don't want to go forward. He's like, no! Yeah. I mean, he means it. So you have to mean it. When a horse is, if this was a scale, if he's this level committed to not going forward, you have to be just slightly above it, or it's not effective. Yeah. If you come in anywhere under here, it won't work. Yeah. In fact, it could have an opposite effect. It could teach him to wear it more, at that point. So you got to get slightly above their level of commitment in order for them to go, yeah, that was not worth it. Easier to go forward. Was that helpful? Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you. Awesome. So what were your takeaways? What's going to stand out to you the most there?
I think working on the ground on his yields, especially like before we start, and then doing all those things slowly in a sequence and just practicing that for a while till we're pretty solid there.
Awesome. Do you feel comfortable doing those? Do you know how to do those? Yep. Awesome. Are you a Patreon member? Yes. Awesome. Now we're talking. Very good. Thank you very much for having us out today. It was a pleasure working with you, and you have to keep me posted on how it goes in the future. Yeah,